style deep dives on both first and second part. I had to cry. This is gonna be third part. Let's not cry. Let's not get triggered. Please, Dr. K, don't do it.
So the big irony is they have a lot of our needs, but they can't even articulate them. And then the other person is left guessing. Okay? Now, there's one real problem if you're anxious attachment, especially if you're a man. So now we're going to talk a little bit about gender dynamics. We're not going to have time for all of this, but because there's even research that shows that gender plays and sexuality play really important roles in attachment theory. And specifically, one of the things that I'm going to highlight, because there's more and more research on this, is anxiously attached men. Because
that's me now. I'm anxiously attached.
Masculinity conflict very clearly with anxious attachment.
Yes.
So men are supposed to be the initiators, but if you're very insecure,
you're a bitch,
it's
like me
very
now.
Hard for you to initiate, right? Because you're putting yourself out there. Like, that's very hard to do. Men who are anxiously attached tend to have sex way later in life. Women who are anxiously attached tend to have sex earlier in life. They're more willing to engage in high-risk sexual behaviors to please their partner. So that includes things like sex without condom, sex without being in a committed relationship, sex with someone who is having sex with other people. So women are more likely, anxiously attached women are more likely to have sex earlier in life. Anxiously attached men are more likely to have sex later in life. So men are supposed to be confident. They're supposed to be initiators. But since you have those insecurities, it becomes kind of like a double whammy, because you're like, not only am I insecure about my appearance, but now I'm insecure about being insecure. And I'm not a man because I'm not confident. So you have a lack of confidence about your lack of confidence.
Oh, so boy.
The other problem with this is when you start to get into these kinds of patterns, what ends up happening is that anxiously attached people can start to get into a lot of unhealthy patterns in their relationships. Sometimes they will overly invest in an unhealthy relationship. They'll tolerate a lot of bad behavior. So they'll tolerate a lot of toxicity and abuse. And then there's even there's studies that show this is really fascinating. If you're someone who has anxious attachment, your mind is more likely to suppress the negative qualities of your partner. So when you look at your partner and they're 50% good and 50% bad, and an anxiously attached person will ignore the bad and focus on the good. They'll focus on the apple and ignore the worm. The other really interesting thing is if you look at people who are anxiously attached, they will suppress positive features of potential partners that they're not dating. So if I'm dating an abusive person and I have a coworker who actually is kind and is attractive and would actually be a way better partner and is actually kind of into me, if I'm anxiously attached, I will ignore that person. I will push down that person. I will literally suppress their positive qualities and suppress the negative qualities of my existence.
It's so unfair, right?
So anxiously attached people are much more likely to
you can't decide where love falls.
Okay? So the other thing that's really important to understand is that sometimes
even if you know,
men who are anxiously attached will also use a lot of coercion. They'll actually engage in a lot of coercive behavior for sex. So I know this sounds kind of weird, but like this is just an important data point. There's research to back it up. So remember that sex is used as a substitute for intimacy. So a lot of times, since it's hard for us to articulate like what our emotional needs are, especially if you're a man, right? You're not allowed to say as a man, like, hey, I'm feeling a lack of confidence today and I feel, insecure about my appearance because I woke up with a zit about my nose, on my nose. It's like, I wish I could put on some makeup. You can't say that as a dude. So it's hard enough for people who are anxiously attached. If you're a dude, it becomes even harder to share some of these insecurities because a part of the masculine ideal, and I'm not blaming women for this, so please don't do
conflicts.
This, okay?
Yep.
It's not women's fault. It's society.
It's society.
If I can't articulate my insecurities because it's not masculine to do so, I need some way to create that emotional intimacy because I can't get my needs met. And oftentimes, what anxiously attached men will do is be sexually coercive. So if I can manipulate you, oh yeah, I'm going to kill myself unless we have sex. It's the only thing that keeps me from being suicidal is sex. And they'll do that they'll engage in manipulative behavior. And once you feel that physical connection, you use it as a substitute for intimacy. You use it as a coping mechanism. So sometimes like a lot of really manipulative crap around sexuality is very common for anxiously attached people. A lot of times people think, oh my God, like it's the avoidantly attached people who are sexually manipulative. They're usually not quite as, I don't know about usually and quite, I can't speak about probabilities or relativity there. That's not really fair from a statistical standpoint. My point is that just because
I like how he has to address this because I would too.
And avoidant, that can happen for anxiously attached people too.
Yeah, because it's a spectrum.
Now, let's talk about dating is attachment.
Dr.
avoidant
K is the
attachment.
Giga Chat,
So the
dude.
first
I
thing
swear I
is,
love
if you're
him.
avoidantly attached or your partner is avoidantly attached, the main thing that you need to do is recognize all the internal thinking that allows you to propagate your avoidant attachment. So the biggest thing that I've seen in people who are avoidantly attached is they engage in a lot of thinking that seems very reasonable, but is actually serving their attachment system. So they'll say things like,
They
I'm
feed
not
into
ready
the
to
loop.
commit. Or they'll think, I'm not ready to commit. It feels too soon. And when I'm doing therapy with these people, I will dig into them. What feels too soon? What would it take for you to feel ready? And what we tend to find is that the further we dig, there's nothing there. There's no moment that they're magically going to wake up and be ready. But remember, that's what they do. They fantasize because they have no experience. So they think, okay, if I meet the perfect person, then
I think I am past this point.
So pay
I
attention
do know
to
what he's
your
talking
thought
about.
processes, which may be incredibly logical. Second thing, another thing that your thought process will do is focus on the imperfections of your current partner. This gives you an excuse. It gives you a reason not to advance the relationship.
Yeah,
Another
I
thing
did
that's
that
very
a lot.
important for avoidantly attached people is like
A
all
lot,
the
a
stuff
lot, a
around
lot, a lot.
alexithymia. Understanding what you feel emotionally, understanding what you're scared of, and being able to articulate it and converse about it. This is critical. So part of the reason this is the real tragedy of people who are avoidantly attached is that part of the reason they don't articulate their emotions is because when they try to articulate emotions, things don't go well. And the reason that they don't go well is because they suck at it. This is a vicious cycle, right? I queue up for a game and I get dumpstered. Therefore, I say, this game sucks. I'm never playing again. If I ever want to have a good experience in the game, I shouldn't never play it again. I need to get better at playing the game. This is something that people who are avoidantly attached fundamentally tend to miss. Is that if I'm having a bad experience with someone, it's not because all women are evil. It's because I suck at having.
If you never shared and then suddenly you wanna play,
prophecy that I see all the
start
time
sharing.
that are quite red-pilled. Is
How?
they view
Like, who's gonna
relationships as
show you?
transactional. And a securely attached woman that you would potentially date who will not be transactional, she doesn't want to date you because you're acting transactionally. So the only people that you're left with are the people who are interested in transactional relationships, which then reinforces your idea that all relationships are transactional. Women are just looking for someone to buy them food, and we pay money, we pay Gucci bags.
The crazy thing is
that's just what women
that
want. Yeah,
the majority is secure, more than 50%.
So you have to be very careful about.
And in my life, I don't ever see a secure person. Very rarely.
The other thing
I know a few.
If you have avoidant attachment, there's a major pitfall that we have to talk about.
The majority here is just fucked.
Love engaging in relationships with non-feasible partners. So if you kind of think about it, what is a surefire way to keep someone at arm's length?
It's crazy, man.
Married to someone else, easy. What's a surefire way to keep someone at arm's length if they're in a different city? I see this so much nowadays with Discord and online relationships. So I don't know if y'all noticed this.
What is it with Discord and
attachment is growing
relationships?
on the internet? We're keeping everyone at arm's length, more and more situations.
What the fuck is that,
We
dude?
don't know what we feel. We're scared to connect with other people.
I don't get
Something
it.
about the technological influence on our brain pushes us more towards avoidant than anxious. If you ask me today, I would say in 10 years, right now 25% of people are anxiously attached, 20% of people are avoidantly attached. I think within 10 years, those numbers will flip. Hilarious.
There's no difference. Same, basically.
There's no way that you're going to get too close with someone who doesn't exist. So now the question becomes, okay, what do y'all do? So here's like, same thing, by the way, with avoidantly attached people. Their signal is we're getting too close, and their behaviors are these kinds of thoughts, focusing on imperfections, creating physical space, making up excuses, pulling away, starting to date other people, dating unfeasible people. All of these things are out of fear of the closeness. So you have to recognize the signal and recognize the reaction. The more that you do this, the better off you'll be. Now, last thing that I'm going to leave y'all with is like, what else can you do? So there are two basic things which people who are securely attached are very good at, which lead to successful relationships. And if you build these things, it will move you towards secure attachment.
Let's
These
hear
are
them.
competencies that are natural for people who are securely attached, which have to be learned by people who are insecurely attached, which includes avoidant and anxious. So the first is mentalization. So mentalization is literally the understanding that someone else has a mind. You have a mind and someone else has a mind. And the mind filters their experience. Things are not objectively correct. I have a mind.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that
will subjectively
actively, so I think I'm on the good way here.
The avoidantly attached people tend to need to focus on this. That what you think isn't right or wrong, it is being influenced by the subjectivity of your mind. Once you recognize that subjective influence, you will be way better. So anytime if you're avoidantly attached, if you're really focusing on this, you have some belief. Why do you believe that? And because your mind says it's not true, that's wrong.
Because I programmed you to believe that.
Right? So if we look at the human brain is not an objective measure of anything. That's why we need instruments that objectively measure things. A human brain is incapable of an objective measurement. It's capable of a very good subjective measurement that almost gets to the realm of objective, right? But it's not truly objective. It's never objective. It's always subjective. That's what a human mind is. Reality and mental thinking are two separate things. So the understanding that everything that you believe is filtered through the experience of mind is critical for avoidant attachment.
You can never
Mentalization,
project
the flip side of that,
anything
is
on
also
anybody.
important for anxious attachment, which is
It took me a
recognizing that
very long
someone-
time
same
to
thing is
learn that.
my mind is interpreting these things
And I
in this
got
way.
confronted with
And
it
also that
very
someone
early
else
already in
has
my
a
life.
mind that causes their behaviors.
Because
Right?
you
So
just
when someone
can't
says, "Oh, no,
understand
I
that
don't
somebody
wanna-
doesn't
I can't go to
understand
work and
something,
do
or that
this. I have my
something isn't
homework
easy
thing."
for them because it's
They
easy
have
for
their
you.
own mind, which allows them to get to that conclusion without all the reasons that your mind is giving you. So if we look at things like treatment of narcissistic personality disorder, one of the best treatments is something called mentalization-based therapy. We literally treat narcissists by teaching them, hey, when someone does something, they have their own fucking reasons. It doesn't have anything to do with you. But the only way that you can understand that is if you understand someone else's mind. So mentalization, we'll talk about this a little bit in 2 days when we talk about perception, but mentalization is the key thing. So if you look at studies on people who are securely attached, they're very good at mentalizing. Since they're good at mentalizing, it's easier for them to forgive. Why? Because they can put themselves in your shoes. Oh, now I understand why you forgot my birthday. Because you were busy. So it's easy to forgive once you're able to mentalize. A narcissist
Oh,
cannot
trust is very big on this one, though.
they're unable to mentalize. They're unable to truly understand.
Oh,
They're able to
that's
say they forgive.
goes
and
into
tolerate
naivety
insults, but that's how they
and
become martyrs,
trust.
right? Oh my God, like you did such a terrible thing. and
Me
I'll tolerate,
overthinking
I'll
it
forgive. No,
that
it wasn't that bad
critically
to do it.
already
You have a
just
good
shows
reason for
how
it.
much
So mentalization.
not I am
And
secure,
the key
how
thing
much I
here is
just
being able
don't
to
trust.
filter your subjective, subjective experiences, emotional beliefs, emotions and beliefs through your subjectivity. What I
Fuck, man,
believe,
I'm
what I
fucked.
feel is subjective. It's not objective truth. Second thing, the goal of relationships is intersubjectivity. Now, this is kind of a weird term, so we have to explain it. I am subjective. You are subjective. Neither of us is right. So a lot of times people think that the goal of a relationship is figuring out who is right and going with that.
That's a
not the
good
goal.
one.
The goal is intersubjectivity.
True, there is
Your
no right or
subjectivity is over
wrong.
there.
Yeah.
My subjectivity is over
Yeah, I
here.
liked it a lot.
An avoidant person will say, agree to disagree. An
Yep.
anxious person will abandon their position and join yours and then punish you for it later. The right
Okay.
is called intersubjectivity. We blend your subjectivity with my subjectivity. We bring it together. Intersubjective. You have a subjectivity, I have a subjectivity, we're going to bring it together. It's not finding out who's right or wrong, it's acknowledging that you have a particular belief, I have a particular belief, and we'll find some way to
Mentalization
make it work together.
Has to
This
be
is really the goal.
the base
Right?
as
It's
well
not
for
about
this.
what's right or wrong, or I have to do it this way or you
And
have to do it this way.
empathy.
It's really about coming together. Here's my perspective. Here's your perspective. How can we blend these two things so that they're somewhat tolerable for both of us? And on some days, you'll do more blending. You'll compromise more. I'll compromise less. That's very healthy in a securely attached relationship.
That is
Not
teamwork.
everything
Yep.
has to be 50-50 all the time. The big irony is people who believe that are more likely to be avoidantly attached. Everything has to be 50-50. And because it's not 50-50, this isn't the right relationship. Avoidant attachment. You see it? Intersubjectivity.
Yeah, I understand
Foreign
it.
concept, by the way. Most people have no concept of this. They think they're subjective and objective. No, it's intersubjectivity. This is the goal. And the more that you move towards these two things, the more naturally securely attached you'll become. So I think like TLDR is like, be careful about who you date. Start with someone who's securely attached, if at all possible. Over time, as you grow, you will become closer to securely attached. For a lot of people here saying, oh, but I don't even have a partner. I've never dated. That's probably a result of anxious attachment. Could be avoidant attachment, but more likely to be anxious attachment, especially if you're a dude. Because you're scared. You're insecure. You don't know.
I swear to God, I don't know
Now,
a
like, I'll see
single
this a lot,
secure
I don't know if this makes
attachment
sense, but
woman
remember,
in my
anxious
life.
people
Not
are
a single
insecure
one.
about their insecurities. Now I'm 27 and I've never dated. I won't ever be able to date again. See, if you really look at it, incels are anxiously attached. This is a gross generalization. This isn't factually correct. This is my observation. Incels, like what's the similarity and difference between incels and red pillars? Securely attached people don't mess with any of this stuff, right? Because they're in relationships. The incels are anxiously attached. The red pillars are avoidantly attached. What the incels want is to become avoidantly attached. We glorify it as a protective mechanism. Build confidence. The world is objective. All women are the same, right? It's a philosophy that appeals to both of these attachment styles. And so if you haven't dated yet, that's okay. What you'll discover, if you're someone who hasn't dated yet, is attachment is 100% at play. I don't know if it's 100% at play. That's my opinion, okay? Not scientific fact. What you'll discover is that oftentimes it is an anxious attachment system which prevents you from dating. So if you ask, why haven't you dated yet? What's wrong? Well, I don't know if this person's going to say yes or no. I don't feel confident in myself. I'm scared of
I don't know
rejection. I
Discord.
have these emotional needs. I feel insecure. I sometimes trauma dump on people and drive them away. People consider me, they put me in the friend zone. Why is that? It's because I do this and I do this. The same system will exist where there's going to be some signals that your body will be receiving. And those signals will result in behaviors. Pay attention to that. And then Bandit Revolver saying dating is hard no matter your attachment style. That's true too. No one ever said dating was easy. Why do we talk about this? Because dating is hard. Because dating is hard enough without this crap. Acting in your life without you realizing it. We're going to try to level the playing field. We're going to try to make it a little bit easier. You're not screwed if you're anxiously attached or avoidantly attached.
I already learned so much from this little clip.
Understand what is going on within you. As you understand this stuff, as you date people who are like this, it will give you the opportunity, it'll change the odds in your favor. That's what we're doing here. This is such powerful science.
I think my
accessible to so few people, right? And we've crafted
lack
all of these narratives on the
in
internet,
trusting people can be fixed very easy. It just needs to be the right person.
And if you understand the fundamental, you can alter it. Good diagnosis precedes good treatment. You have to understand what's going on with you first. Then you can fix it. And the whole problem is that what a lot of people do, they don't realize this, is they don't mentalize. So they come up with some kind of objective conclusion. All men are this way, all women are this way. And then they operate based on that objective conclusion, but that objective conclusion is not objective. It's produced by the mind. Okay, so a lot of great questions here. So question number 1, as an anxious attached person, how can I recover that identity loss? I feel my chameleonness has made me lack my thing while all my friends have their own thing. What a great question. So when we're anxiously attached, we tend to be like chameleons. So when someone else likes something, we want to be their friend, right? So since we want to be their friend, since we want to be their boyfriend, since we want to be their girlfriend, since we want to have a relationship with them, we adopt some of their features. Now, if you look at what is the core problem that
this is what makes me say I'm anxious right now.
Acknowledge their own emotional needs explicitly. The tricky thing about
but I don't feel like my emotional needs are getting
but you will get
not
them
met
in roundabout ways. You don't acknowledge them. You don't even are not 100% sure what you feel. You just know this is why you're passive aggressive. This is why you play games. This is why you guilt trip people. This is why you withdraw. Because you're feeling something, and in order to calm down that feeling, you engage.
I think I'm another attachment they don't even know about.
Manage your emotions through external things. The world fixes your emotions for you. And that's because when you were growing up, that's probably what happened. When you were feeling unwell, your caregiving was inconsistent. So when the world was there to take care of you, you felt good. And when the world wasn't there to take care of you, you feel bad.
But not only, like throughout all my life, it was like this.
Now, a securely attached person, the world
That's why I become anxious now.
And this is the big irony. When the world is always there to take care of you, you become independent. You learn from the world how to take care of yourself. I know it's kind of weird. It's like paradoxical. But when there's a random reinforcement schedule, it increases our dependency on the thing. When there's a fixed reinforcement schedule, we can gain independence from it more easily. This is why people gamble. So now if you've spent your whole life being a chameleon and you don't have a sense of identity, how do you deal with that identity loss? Brilliant question. What you do is acknowledge your emotional needs, right? So instead of looking to the outside world,
I guess I'm still avoidant, but with anxious tendencies. But what am I trying to do? Categorize myself. It's just I want to understand more, but I do already know. I was that for sure, big time once. But I'm not anymore.
These are vasanas, mental habits that you don't even realize.
But I still have a lot of damage. Like the trust.
There's one right there.
Like what the
I'm
fuck?
having a rough day, but you're busy. Don't worry about it.
Everything else, though,
another one right there. You don't
I
have
think
time to
I'm
come
big
to my
time
work thing,
secure.
no big deal, even though it is. So if you look at anxiously attached people, they tend
just
to
talking about
their
stuff
and
alone,
devalue
just this
themselves.
alone,
So what you basically
it
need to
fixes
do is
everything.
So in therapy, what we'll do with these people is like we'll sit down and ask them, okay, like what do you want? We'll spend time literally talking to
Just
them
say.
about what is going on inside. What are your emotional needs? What are you feeling? What do you prefer? What do you like? And what I oftentimes encounter is that they will say what they like, but then they will devalue it right away. I like pizza, but Thai food is healthier. They do this really subtle, simple trick where anytime they have a preference, they squash it. They say, oh, it's not as good as this other person's preference.
But what if you
They
really
don't
don't
devalue
mind?
themselves. It's not an identity loss. You haven't lost your identity. The identity is there. The preferences are there. They've been suppressed. They've been devalued. So it's not an issue of finding something. It's an issue of elevating something. And the more that you catch yourself in your mental habits, the better this will become. Great question.
I like it too, but
See, someone in
I'm
chat is
confused
making
about myself.
a great statement. Damn, people pleasing. See, we talk about, oh, I people please. And what do we do when I people please? Let's devalue people pleasing. People pleasing
But
is bad.
I
should
like to
stop
people please
people pleasing.
often
I need to be
because I
better.
don't
I need
mind,
to be less of a people pleaser.
and I
That's
like
the
when
same
people are
dynamic.
happy.
There you are taking your
And I don't feel like
initial
I'm
impulse of
missing
being a people
something out
pleaser
when I
and
need something. I
devaluing
will
it.
say.
You suck because you're a people pleaser. Instead, what you should do is ask yourself, why do I want to people please? Where does the desire to people please come from? You'll see, it's so subtle, so quick, so easy to judge. Can you spend a few seconds on disorganized attachment? What
Yeah,
do
it
they
makes sense. So I
do
make sense
instead
for
of avoiding
myself.
pulling, and how does the Venn diagram look? Yeah, I can spend a few seconds on it. So disorganized attachment is a system where in avoidant attachment and anxious attachment, there is some degree of consistency. about the way that you form relationships with another human being. You have relationships. They're not ideal, but there are relationships that are formed. In the case of anxious attachment, you have a relationship where your needs are not consistently met, random reinforcement. In avoidant attachment, you are punished for forming connections with other people. This is consistent. So anytime there is consistency, there is at least a pattern that forms. In disorganized attachment, usually the relationships with other people are so severely screwed up that the fundamental way that you connect with another human being gets messed up in some way. You're not.
I know a bunch of these. Actually, I lost contact, but I know a handful of these people. And you can't help but feel just sad and sorry for them. Man, you can't even... Fuck. It's some you know so good, you can't even imagine that there must have been something going wrong in their childhood so bad. So bad. You have to believe it's something else.
Able to consistently form connections with people in a consistent manner. So people who have disorganized attachment can do everything from like dissociate to not know like how to form any kind of connection.
5% of all people,
to
apparently.
be so disorganized and so emotionally dysregulated that like they can't form relationships with people.
Yeah, like not even friendships.
There can sometimes be like coexistences
Mhm.
in somewhat of a dynamic.
These
kind of,
are
like, harmonious
fascinating to me.
equilibrium. I've seen that before.
Because I can
It's like a really weird
see
relationship. It's hard to describe.
you
It's not like a
spiral that
regular-
much that
and
you
I
go
say
in
this word-
there
I say this
and
word
never come out.
carefully. It's not a normal relationship. And I don't mean abnormal in like a derogatory way. I mean like if you look at the bell curve of things that
I can
people
see it
normally
happen
do in
mostly to
relationships,
women.
and you say that there's like a two-standard
Because society.
deviation, people with disorganized attachment will sometimes form relationships that are outside of those two standard deviations. That's what I mean by not normal. It's not a value judgment. So disorganized attachment just means that like sometimes people kind of don't know how to participate in a relationship. That's the best answer actually that I think about it. So they're like norms. So when I work with people who are like highly disorganized in their relationships, like they don't understand some of the basics. Like, oh, I didn't know that sex was something that is an expression of intimacy, that people in love have sex. I didn't understand that. And you may think like, hold on a second, how could someone not believe that? Well, if they were like sexually abused as a child, what is their experience of sex? It has nothing to do with love. That's what we mean by disorganized. Some of the fundamentals of what we assume about how relationships work are lacking in a disorganized attachment. The fact that I have emotions and you have emotions, and then sometimes I have a bad day, sometimes you have a bad day, that there's some kind of exchange or reciprocity in a relationship they may not understand. Because when they were growing up, there was no reciprocity. They were told they were a piece of shit every single day. No one cared about their emotions. No one, is just a mess. It can look quite different depending on what the circumstances are. That's why it's hard to talk. It's hard to do a lecture where I give... See, there's enough consistency around anxious attachment and avoidant attachment and secured attachment to where we can describe it, we can point out the patterns. In disorganized, it gets very disorganized. That's why we use the word disorganized, because it's not
very
easily
fascinating.
representable. Now, the big caveat there is I'm not an expert in attachment theory. If y'all find someone, or we find someone who knows more
you most
about
likely never know
specializes
anybody
in
of that
attachment, I'm 100% sure they could give you a way better answer.
They are either on
But when it
medication
comes to
or
my
in
clinical
therapy
experience,
or
I've probably seen,
clinical
I don't
or
know, like thousands
you
of patients,
don't know them
5,000
probably.
to 10,000 patients in my life is my guess. And like the number of people that I've done psychotherapy who have a disorganized attachment, I can think of like 3 or less.
Yeah, look.
Where I've really come to understand them. And these are like really weird situations. Like one patient was incapable of having a relationship, like technically, professionally, they were incapable of having a romantic relationship. Had parents, one parent who was way, way, way older than what you would normally expect a parent to be. So age gap relationship that was not abusive, but was like cultish. And then like they ended up walking a professional path where they couldn't engage in romantic relationships. So it's like just really weird situations like that. So they grew up in like a cult household. That has its own weird set of stuff.
Yeah, we watched a bunch of
like,
cult interview
can't
documentations.
because my job forbids it.
Damn, dude.
So then it's like, what is that person's relationship?
You can't imagine people
What do they look like?
nowadays with phones and stuff.
So the reason it's hard to form a Venn
Trying to
diagram
keep
is
children away from growing up
fundamentals of two human
with
beings coming together,
social
like,
media
may
or
not be
something to
possible
drive their
in their current
cult
state.
beliefs.
It's like we're on two separate
Holy
pieces of
fuck.
paper. And furthermore, oftentimes they struggle with their own identity. Like, so there's a lot of dissociation, a lot of depersonalization, oftentimes with disorganized attachment. So it's like even the sense of, they're not even a complete circle themselves. So then it's very hard to form a relationship. So they do have relationships, but they tend to be, you know, like they can be like even sometimes fun and good for periods of time. Like I see this a lot sometimes when, you know, I'm working like on an inpatient setting and two patients who are severely traumatized and inpatient and really doing bad fall in love. It's like a good example of disorganized attachment. It's like they'll literally have homicidal ideation today, be in love tomorrow, and have suicidal ideation the third day. And it's hard to describe that. It's like very difficult.
That sounds romantic.
Changing internal interpretations feels like I'm trying to delude myself. It sounds to me more like alternative delusions rather than conclusions. And then someone else asked, what's a CBT example of changing I'm unlovable because I'm ugly? Okay, so y'all should definitely come on Wednesday because we're going to talk about perception. So changing internal interpretations feels like I'm trying to delude myself. So here's the question that I have for you. If you're someone who thinks, oh my God, thinking this way is deluding myself, where on earth did you get the idea that your current belief system is correct and that this alternate belief system is the delusion? Let's start there. Forget about what the delusion is and what's right and what's wrong. Oh, you deserve love. You deserve happiness. You're beautiful.
It's always you are coming from a direction.
I don't know any of that. I can say that kind of crap. People will say like, oh my God, you say that because you're a psychiatrist, but I'm not lovable. Fair enough. Fine. Who am I to tell you otherwise? What do I know about your life? The question is, why do you believe that this is objective and this is a delusion? Well, the answer is simple. Very good. My life experiences. Now, hold on a second. So if we're saying that this reality is formed by your experiences, what that also means is that your reality can change if you have different experiences, right? And so this is the path forward. This is why, and the answer is already there. We've already explained this. Now, hopefully, y'all can connect the dots. Dating a securely attached person will heal anxious attachment. How? Because you change the experience of the person. If you're an anxiously attached person and you constantly date avoidantly attached people, or if you're an avoidantly attached person who always dates transactionally, you will create a self-fulfilling prophecy. We have piles of research that show that dating a securely attached person
I might give this a try.
Will heal your attachment. Not necessarily, but moves in that direction. And you don't need to date someone. You can go to therapy. You can do work by yourself. There's all kinds of other alternatives, right? So it's not the only way, and it doesn't work 100% of the time. And that's because we have to alter your experience. Once your experience will change, your beliefs will change. So I know that you believe what you believe, and you're right to do so. But be very clear that if I think that a sunset is not beautiful because I'm wearing a blindfold all the time, that doesn't mean that a sunset isn't capable of being beautiful. That means that I need to take the blindfold off. So the biggest tragedy of a lot of what I see here is that y'all really do create your reality. You have no idea how powerful you are. And that too is something that you've been taught because you've been given an experience of life where you've been deprived of your power. So you
see, it's so true.
And so naturally you think that you have no capabilities in this world.
You just gotta break out.
Really stop and think for a second about what is the difference between you and someone else. There's some amount of external circumstance which allows someone else in this moment to do more than you can. So if you have like no financial resources and someone else has $100,000 a year to work with, their lives over the course of this year will be very different from yours. There's no dispute on that. The question is, 5 years from now, where can you be and where can they be? And this is the real tragedy, is you think since there's a difference today, there must be a difference tomorrow, there must be a difference a year from now, there must be a difference 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and that's where things are wrong. That's where if the key thing is creating new experiences. Then your beliefs will change automatically. The problem is that you let your current beliefs shape your future experiences. This is the tragedy.
Man.
They're right about so many things.
Every Dr. K video, I swear.
They create a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Every time.
And that's what we mostly do. Self-sabotage, self-fulfilling prophecies, so common in human existence. What does that mean? If
I believe I'm gonna buy the membership for $10 a month.
Someone who believes you're ugly and that you're unlovable.
It's just we can't watch it on YouTube, I suppose.
Be critical of
it. It will be too
How
good.
Are you going to engage with those thoughts? Are you just going to accept them? Are you going to go see a therapist? Are you going to go to an ashram and meditate? You must act. And as you have experiences, and we try to guide you as best as we can.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do. That's gonna be like therapy, dude. But it's cheap as fuck.
Healing. I don't even have the time to do psychotherapy with you. I'm not your doctor. You must have different experiences. That's the only way. And then now we get to the real problem, which is that when you strive for a different experience, what gets in the way? It's your beliefs. There's no point. I'm unlovable anyway. This person will think I'm ugly. And then we get to the real crux of it, which is where is the problem? The problem is inside your head. And this is the real paradox. This is the irony. This is the tragedy. Is since it's inside your head, it's completely controllable by you. And your life can absolutely transform.
It's so hard, though.
Right? So it's very hard. The hardest thing to do as a human being is to act in a way that is contrary to your beliefs. That's the hardest thing. It's very easy to listen to the mind. The mind says, oh, do this thing, you'll be happy. It's very easy to listen to it. Not listening to the mind is hard. To have bigotry or hatred or racism or homophobia or transphobia in your heart and to act with compassion towards another human being, that's hard, right? And here we are blaming all these racists and bigots and whatever, but we have compassion for everyone who has body dysmorphia and feels like they're ugly. It's easy to have compassion for some people and hard to have compassion for others. And we celebrate that. It's crazy when you think about it. So what
Big
we're gonna try to teach
separations
y'all to do,
happening.
right? This is our mission here.
Oh,
is to help
Kylie,
you
hör
understand that
auf.
you as a human being, you have a mind, you have a brain, you have a body, maybe you have a soul. Who knows? Right? And it's like, it's really hard. If it was easy, y'all would have done it by now.
Too
So I'm
soon.
like this guy who's sitting at the bottom of Mount Everest.
Ich habe schon darüber geredet, groß auf Stream,
Doesn't make it any easier for
in
you.
Verbindung mit Dr.
Right?
K.
There's something really powerful. You
Ich
have a
glaube
very
aber, wir
powerful
schauen die auch
opportunity
nie wieder.
to
Also
quite
ich kann
transform
das nicht.
because here I am at the bottom telling you at the top the view is really good. And the real tragedy here is that if you choose to climb to the top and you look at the top, and even if you discover the view isn't that great, you'll be changed. Because then you've done something really, really, really important, which is you've climbed to the top of the mountain without knowing the view at the top. So I know it's crazy, but if you really want to transform your life, it's not knowing someone is right and then doing the thing. It is doing the thing and not knowing. It is doing the thing anyway. If you are able to do the thing anyway, your life will be completely different. You will have control of your life. And what do I mean by that? So think about it, right? So if I have a good enough reason, then it's easy to do things. But if I don't have a good enough reason, it's hard to do things. So then if we look at my actions in life, they're determined by my circumstances. That means I'm not in control. To have a small reason or a not enough good enough reason and to do something anyway.
I think I'm in a
that's where
very
you really
hard
get
spot
control,
right now.
because then you're running the show. You don't need
But
something
there is
at
a
the
way,
top
I
to
see
be
the
your
way.
reward. You're in control. And even if the view at the top of the mountain sucks, what you've still done
It's
is
gonna
climb
take some
20,000,
time.
30,000 feet. And that is something that
And
you're
then
going to take
it'll
away
fall.
for the rest of your life.
But yeah,
That's the real advantage. Because once you did that, now you can do something else. Changing beliefs that have life experiences of evidence feels impossible. Yes. If that's all you operate on, it's going to be impossible. But you can have different experiences. That's what you should focus on. Don't even focus on changing a belief. What is the experience? Even something like therapy is a great example of an experience that changes a belief. It's hard. You can critically look at your beliefs and change them, but it's very difficult. Right? It's hard. I'm not saying it isn't hard. Very hard. Okay, we have time for one more. What happens if two anxiously attached people date each other? So sometimes you get this like whirlwind of like emotional neediness where like, I mean, it can work well. It can work well. But oftentimes the problem is that what an anxiously attached person really needs is someone to like reassure them and provide them with like emotional stability. And another anxiously attached person, depending on the day, may or may not be able to do that. So the real irony here is that anxiously attached people really gravitate towards avoidantly attached people quite a bit, and then securely attached people, and then lastly, anxiously attached people. Oftentimes, sometimes it'll be like, oh, this person is like me, this person really gets me. So that I've seen good cases of that where they're like, oh, this person really gets me, we're like peas from the same pod and we can really grow together. I've seen that for sure. I see that most commonly in things like addictions, like not even attachment theory, but like this person really understands what it means to be addicted. And much like addictions, two people who are trying to be sober together can really help each other out or bring each other down. Oh, we've been sober for 6 months. We deserve a weekend off. And both of your brains are like, fuck
if they
now,
work
since you're
out,
partners on
they are
board,
the
it's easy to
strongest, I
justify.
believe.
In that same way, when I work with anxiously attached people, sometimes they date other anxiously attached people, and they're good enough at like swapping to where they can provide each other the support that they need. Other times, though, what happens is they get too far in their own head.
But
they're
on a
emotionally
day-
dysregulated at the same time to where
Yeah.
it really like becomes a problem. And then it
Oh,
can become
that's
this
the
weird-
thing.
It can become this weird, like, demanding relationship where, like, both
Yeah,
sides
yeah.
are demanding and neither side can get what it wants. I'm thinking about one patient in particular where, they try it for a while and there are times
No,
where it
they're not
works and
strong.
times that it doesn't work,
Fuck.
and they want to persevere
The times
and they
thing
want to make it work.
is.
And so they work on it for a while. They go to couples therapy, and then ultimately, I want to say, let me think about this. Can I think of any of my patients who are anxiously attached who have stable relationships with other people who are anxiously
I was thinking about couples therapy a
can't
lot
think
and
of
thinking, why would
anyone.
people do that?
Doesn't mean that
Because they want to try and make it work, even though they know they're not
kinda
good for each
spin off
other.
of a whirlwind.
Why would they want to
It
stay
has
together?
good
The
moments,
only
it has
reason is
bad
sex.
moments, and over time, people kind of come to the realization that
Because the
this is not
chemicals
healthy for
in the
us.
air, they just want each
how
other.
does
But they
polyamory fit
can't
in
stand each
in
other.
all this? Okay,
There's something
So,
for everybody.
let's
It's so
talk
crazy.
about polyamory for a second. So the short answer is that polyamory is complicated.
For
all of our
children,
research
right?
on attachment-based systems and
Children can be a
relationships
reason.
are like presuming that there's two people. So when
Culture.
you add more people into the relationship, and furthermore, like the fact that not everyone has the same status, right? So I've seen polyamorous relationships where like two people are a parent and one person is like kind of a third wheel. And then, so it just gets complicated. And the short answer is, from a scientific perspective, we don't really know. because there hasn't been a whole lot of research on polyamory and attachment that I'm aware of. I'm sure that people have done some studies and stuff. The really interesting thing is that right now the problem in the polyamory research is that there's big biases, in my opinion. But I saw an interesting meta-analysis recently that was looking at relationship satisfaction for people
Explain
who are in
yourself.
polyamorous relationships, and basically found that people who are in polyamorous relationships are quite happy with them. That's what the meta-analysis shows. So the problem, though, is that
I could never share.
this is a relationship. I mean, this is a paper that is synthesizing research.
I'm toxic.
From
That's a
people
toxic
who are
trait.
in polyamorous relationships. So there's a big bias in the literature right now, which is that people who are unhappy in polyamorous relationships don't stay in polyamorous relationships. So there's a selection bias because we have a survivorship bias, basically, where people who find a way to make it work are the ones that we're studying. And what I've seen clinically is that it's like, doesn't work out, I want to say like 75% of the time, is my gut check on a clinical experience with sample size of one psychiatrist. Now, there are biases there too. So this is another thing that we have to keep in mind. Doesn't mean that polyamorous relationships are bad. This is also where we as human beings may be evolving. So there are probably periods of time when we had a very patriarchal society and when like feminism was growing and stuff like that, that like there were a lot of independent relationships that, you know, divorce rates have increased. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Not necessarily, right? Does that kind of make sense? Where polyamorous relationships may be
It has something to do with it, but
they require, my experience is that they require a level of sophistication and they tend to be more difficult to pull off. And that oftentimes people will use polyamorous relationships to fulfill other kinds of needs. And generally speaking, what I've seen in polyamorous relationships that are successful is these are people who tend to be pretty satisfied with their current relationship. So this is the big irony. Like basically, you know, will a polyamorous relationship work or not work? My gut check is if the relationship is currently working, then it has a far higher chance of transitioning to a poly relationship versus a relationship that has lots of problems and we're going to go poly to try to fix it. That usually doesn't work. Kira Chow was saying polyamorous relationships are like trying to save the relationship by having a baby. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a baby in a relationship and it work out well. It just means the relationship has to be in a particular way.
yeah,
Okay.
but not for the
Hope
reason.
you enjoyed today's video. We talk about a bunch of topics like this on the channel, so be sure to
Great
subscribe for more.
video.
If
That
you're
was
already
part
subscribed,
3
GG, and we'll see you in chat.
of the attachment style deep dive Valentine's member gift. Oh man. A bunch of insight again, dude. This man is a well of knowledge and wealth. His knowledge is my wealth. So good, dude. Yeah, see, I never was in a secure relationship. I think I had one secure, but as I said, like I don't even know like secure people. How do you meet them? That is like the next question I'm gonna have to investigate. To meet people nowadays, it's actually rough. But especially as a man, like you show up, you're the creep, you're the stalker. You know, it's like pre-programmed. You're the pervert. It's so hard. Ugh. You have to find like a niche event and just go there. Yeah. Something of that sort. Fuck. Oh my god, it's so fucking you have to make like an elaborate plan just to get to talk to people. Cause internet, forget it. It's not gonna work. There is no women on the internet anyways.